Hello, everybody. Hi, Krat.
Hello there.
How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've put on
Excellent.
this extra research voice just for the evening.
Very good. I'm glad that you could bring your research voice to this most excellent of research notes and storytelling.
Indeed, indeed.
But welcome everybody to my channel. This is a first for both my Twitch channel and for like the entire time that I've been doing YouTube and Twitch. I don't think I've ever done a storytelling. So this will be really cool.
Yeah.
As you can see, hopefully from my stream, thank you
Yep.
to whoever just followed. Since I have to have desktop display on, I cannot see my alerts. Give me a second, I might be able to or Crack can tell me who it was.
I just missed it annoyingly. I went back to the page
Think-
and just it was fading away. I'm so sorry.
I think it was Tibialberry. Yeah, it looks like Tibialberry. Okay. Get more monitors. I have a second monitor. I have one, but I can't set it up on this desk. I have to wait until I move. Okay, so I've got chat up on my phone, so that ought to work. But yeah, as you can see, we have a lot of SCPs in front of me. Krat will be assisting me with that. I have Streamlabs as well, but I have to have desktop capture, and I don't want the infinite picture of Streamlabs to pop up. But
Are you sure you don't want to gaze into the void of SCP SLOBS?
the madness!
The madness! Ah! Gaze upon it! No.
Does anyone know who or what another TV viewers? It's a bot. It is a bot, but it is one of the standard bots that are just on Twitch. There's like 2 or 3 dozen of them, but it doesn't do anything as far as I know, because there's a number of bots out there that are used by larger channels that are specifically like they have that so that it goes to different other channels, usually smaller channels, and just shows what they're doing to the person that owns the bot, because it's just there to give them more views. That is literally what it is to give smaller channels more views. I know of one specific one that, or no, I know of 3 specific ones that do that, but they haven't visited this channel in a while. It's got a few too many followers for them. But yeah, that I think that's what another TV viewer is just somebody's bot that they have set up to watch smaller channels. Yeah, so we have a lot of SCP stories in front of me. We are not going to read all of these. We're going to summarize some of the larger ones, but we are going to read a few. We're going to read all of these smaller ones, and then I'm going to read the story, The Stars Do Not Wait for You. And Krat is going to assist me with some of the addendums and the interview logs. So
Indeed.
that ought to be good. We're going to have him as the stereotypical British researcher, right?
Yes. Hello.
Which, on a different note, on a slightly related note, I want to give a little shout out to a different SCP reader. He is not in chat as far as I know. And I have not like contacted him or anything, but I want to give a shout out to the Vulcan, who introduced. I found his channel for SCP readings, and through him I found the Explore series. But the Vulcan is absolutely my favorite. I love the way that he does stuff, and I think like listening to some of his readings inspired me to do this, to put this together. He's the voice of the Plague Doctor. Nice. He's Dr. Miller on SCP Blackout. So that's pretty cool. I mean, he's Dr. Miller on his own channel, but you know. Alright, so you ready, Krat?
I am.
Excellent. Excuse me a second. I had
Good to hydrate.
I had voice training a little earlier, and I did a little bit of orc accent while playing with stress in them. So
Nice.
voice is a little raw, but yeah.
A little raw, absolutely.
All right, so starting off with SCP-1915, status quo. Item number SCP-1915. Object class Euclid. Special containment procedures. SCP-1915 is to be kept in its self-modified humanoid containment unit. Furniture and sustenance are unnecessary, as SCP-1915 provides them itself. One guard is to escort SCP-1915 during its daily walk around the designated yard. No expensive or sensitive equipment is to be brought into SCP-1915's vicinity. Description: SCP-1915 is a Caucasian man, 33 years old, of an unexceptionable build and height, identified as redacted by the documents it was carrying on its person at the time of its retrieval. A background check revealed no relatives or close friends. SCP-1915's anomalous nature stems from a localized causality abnormality, which negates any significant long-term changes to its body, personality, memory, or lifestyle. SCP-1915 alters reality in its close vicinity as is necessary to maintain its personal status quo. SCP-1915's effects are largely limited to non-living matter manipulation and internal mental manipulation, and are incapable of permanently affecting living creatures other than SCP-1915 itself. SCP-1915 does not appear to be aware of its anomalous properties, and the mild to moderate discontent it expressed concerning its life during several interviews suggests it possesses limited, if any, control over them. SCP-1915 is unaware of its containment, believing it is still employed at the offices of the now-defunct, redacted, corporation where it was recovered. Addendum 1915-A, Incident Log 1915. Incident 1915-A. Date blank blank 20 blank. Offices of the blank corporation. Blankety blank blank. During its initial recovery, SCP-1915 was escorted to Site-17 by Mobile Task Force Delta-17, Green Caps. As it was being transported, SCP-1915 altered MTF Delta-17's armored vehicle to the form of a number blank city bus, which SCP-1915 used in its commute to work while it was still employed. SCP-1915 was driving the vehicle at the time, was seemingly convinced the members of the task force were other passengers. Agent Blank, who was driving the vehicle at the time, was briefly convinced that he was the bus driver, and assumed the bus's usual route. Verbal persuasion from other task force members proved sufficient in negating this effect, and SCP-1915 was safely transported to the altered vehicle to Site-17. Excuse me, my hair keeps getting in my way. There we go. Incident 1915-B, date blank blank 20 blank. Site-17, Humanoid Containment Wing, Cell 257. Upon arriving at its designated cell, SCP-1915 converted it to an exact replica of its apartment, located at redacted. Electronic devices continued functioning without an external power source, and the bathroom maintained both a running water supply and sewage access. When removed from the converted cell, objects did not retain this anomalous property. SCP-1915 assumed that escorting site security members and researchers are neighbors and local service givers. Incident 1915-C. Location: Site-17, Humanoid Containment Wing, Cell 257, Maintenance Closet 17. The morning following its initial containment, SCP-1915 exited its cell, despite it being locked, and entered a nearby maintenance closet. Site security dispatched to the scene discovered the closet was converted to mimic SCP-1915's cubicle at blank, including working telephone and internet connections. When confronted by site security, SCP-1915 apologized for coming after hours to finish the budget report, claiming that it needed the extra income. Addendum 1915-B, Interview Log SCP-1915-3. Interviewer, Dr. Blank, interviewed SCP-1915. Forward. This interview was held a week after SCP-1915's recovery. During that time, SCP-1915 has maintained the same set daily routine. Begin log.
Good afternoon, SCP-1915.
Oh, hello. The K is silent, by the way. Are you new around here?
SCP-1915, are you aware of where you are?
Oh, in the office, of course.
This isn't your office.
Well, of course it's not mine, and I was passed for promotion again.
That's not what I meant. I don't think so, at least.
Don't worry about it. Happens all the time. People look at me and say, look at this guy. He must have an office by now. Worked for the company so long, after all. Dedicated man like him. But, no, it's the cubicle life for me. So, what's your position?
Junior accountant. Bernstein's team.
Oh, you guys are on the 3rd floor, right?
Yeah, next to the coffee machine.
That's where Lisa works, right?
Sure, I guess.
Could you tell her to, I don't know, give me a call sometime?
Sure?
You know what? Forget it. She's just gonna reject me. Don't tell her anything. At least that way I can still dream.
That's nice. Listen, I think the boss is waiting for me, so...
Oh, sure, man. You have a good day, you hear? Don't be a stranger. End log. SCP-1935. I don't remember what the story designation was.
The story designation for this one was an empty chamber.
Thank you very much. Item number SCP-1935. Object Class Neutralized. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-1935 has shown no sign of activity within the last 36 months, and has been classified Neutralized. Researchers wishing to study 1935 may do so with permission from Regional Command 24-A. Description: SCP-1935 is a 2-story concrete structure located in the outskirts of blank blank. The ground floor consists of 4 identical chambers and a staircase to the 2nd floor. The 2nd floor houses an additional 4 chambers. Each chamber contains an empty alcove, 4 meters in radius, and dented into the floor. From the time of SCP-1935's discovery and the 5 years following it, any person within the structure would experience hallucinations, coupled with sense of temporal and spatial dislocation at inconsistent intervals. Said hallucinations always consisted of a view of the Earth as seen from a moving point in space. This point is located at height of approximately 370 kilometers above sea level, i.e. in orbit, and moves at a speed of approximately 27,000 kilometers an hour. Hallucinations typically lasted between 5 and 30 minutes. The intervals between hallucinations grew increasingly long during the time SCP-1935 was active, from one occurring approximately every hour in the time immediately following its discovery, to hallucinations occurring only about every 2 weeks in the period prior to its neutralization, following incident SCP-1935 Atropos. Additionally, SCP-1935 was found to be resistant to changes in its local reality. SCP-1935's interior repeatedly altered itself in an attempt to return to the way it was prior to being contained by the Foundation. This anomalous quality of SCP-1935 manifested in natural phenomenon such as the patterns in which dust gathered and a significantly lowered rate of growth for flora found within the structure, as well as in the apparent discarding of litter left in the premise of SCP-1935. Larger items and people seemed entirely unaffected by this secondary effect of 1935, and it is not currently known if or how it related to the primary phenomenon. Surface similarities have been found between this secondary anomalous effect of SCP-1935 and that of SCP-1915. Though due to the general nature of the phenomenon and the inherent difficulty of conducting research in SCP-1915's vicinity, establishing more solid connections has proved unsuccessful. Addendum 1935-A. Incident 1935 Atropos. Following a period of 3 weeks without activity in SCP-1935, Foundation personnel within the structure experienced the following hallucination on Redacted. This hallucination diverged significantly from the previously established pattern of SCP-1935 in that it included an element of speech. Speaker was identified as male and spoke for 7 minutes and 15 seconds before ceasing.
First of all, I want to let you know that you don't have to listen to this. What I have to say isn't really all that important. Hell, I'm not even sure it's interesting. You could walk away right now and nothing bad is going to happen to you or to anyone else. But if you're willing, you have some spare time, I'd like you to listen. It's the last story I'm ever going to tell, after all. When I was little, I wanted to go to space. Not as an astronaut, mind you. Even as a boy, I knew I didn't have what it took to be something like that. I didn't really know how I would get there, or when, or why. All I knew that at least once in my life, I wanted to leave this planet behind, if only for a few moments. To be above everything I knew, unrestrained, without worry, without fear. To be uncontained. Get bullied in high school. Those awkward, geeky, unattractive kids who get picked on by bigger or prettier or more popular than them, who get pushed around relentlessly without mercy until they have no choice but to turn to each other for company simply because no one else would have them. The kind of kids that adults always say would grow up to be scientists or venture capitalists or some other great thing just so they could feel better about doing nothing for them. I wasn't one of those kids. I never got my head stuck in a toilet, was never humiliated because of the TV shows I liked or the books I read or the fact I wasn't really interested in sports or because I looked weird or had a strange accent. I watched those poor bastards being tormented for no reason, sometimes brutally. Why I never once said anything? Jealous of them. I saw them hang around in groups, in pathetic bunches of the miserable and downtrodden. I saw the bonds building up between them, nurtured as much by mutual suffering as by their common interests. I saw those kids slowly transforming each other into grown men and women through their suffering, watched how they hardened and stuck close to one another like carbon molecules making a diamond. And me? This was. As I said, I was never picked on by bullies. Hell, my existence was rarely even acknowledged by them. I seemed to drift through my years in school like some sort of half-corporeal apparition. I didn't have any friends, but not because of anything I was. No, it was because of this odd sense of lethargy that always seemed to weigh down every decision I made, like an anchor to a drowning ship. I wanted to go out and hang with the other kids, to go to, I don't know, whatever kids do. Riding bikes, play video games, or smoke, or get drunk and caught by the cops and spend a night in jail until your parents come and drag your crying ass home. But I couldn't. To do anything at all. At first, I told myself that it was just me being lazy, and that was probably true to an extent. There was something more to it, though. Something that fed my laziness until it became a bloated, obese thing. I was scared. Of what? I know. My parents always tried to get me to try new things, to go out there and live, to just do something for heaven's sake. Yes. I was their only son, after all, born late in their lives, and they only ever wanted what was best for me. They told me they didn't care if I got in trouble or didn't do too well in school or anything like that. They just wanted me to be happy, and I loved them for that. The world I loved. But I couldn't do it. Not even for them. So I drifted on until school was done. 12 years. And I don't think I spoke more than a score of words to any of my classmates. I'm not even sure most of them knew my name. Am I boring you? Sorry if I am. Have a point with this, I promise. It's just hard to keep focused the way I am now. To watch a lot of movies about college. They all promised that it was a time to party non-stop, to meet girls, have a good time. I wasn't stupid enough to buy that, but I thought that maybe living on campus would force me to interact with people, and that maybe that way I'll finally get over myself for long enough to actually meet someone. My parents thought so too, and so they sent me to the best college they could afford, even though my mother was already not well at the time. Worked. I met a few people I didn't mind hanging out with in between classes and during meals, and I learned to talk a bit more and to joke around and be social, I guess. Becoming apparent that all of this was an illusion. Sure, I was talking to people, but I never actually got to know any of them. We would talk about this or that class or show some show on TV or what an asshole that politician was and how he dared propose this particular law. And that was that. The moment I was out of their sight, I was out of their minds, and sad as it is to admit, it was the same for me too. I crawled back to my old habits, became just the person I was in high school all over again. I didn't do any partying, needless to say, nor was I having a particularly good time. And girls, there was one girl. She took some of the same classes I did since she had to take some time off during her first year. We talked sometimes before class. She was nice and gorgeous, and never anything but perfectly polite to me. Never about anything of substance, just like with all the others, but I liked her a lot. She was the only one I kept thinking about. About it, of course. The thought of asking her out terrified me beyond reason. So I waited. I don't know for what. Maybe I dreamed she'd ask me out herself or some other stupid notion like that. Needless to say, nothing like that ever happened. At the end of my second year, she left. There was no drama, of course, because as far as she was concerned, I wasn't anything more than a casual acquaintance. She left, and that was that. Cried because of it. I might have. You know, there are all these songs about having your heart broken, how bad it hurts, and how the pain won't go away, and all that. I guess that what I felt was the exact opposite. What I mean was that I beginning to sort of go numb, maybe? I don't really like using the word because it implies something deep and dramatic, some plunge into the depths of despair or something. It wasn't anything like that. I lived my life, I did alright in school, I worked, and most of the time I didn't even think about it. I functioned. But sometime, usually when I was late, I used to think about this, this lack in my life, and it was then that I knew I should stop hoping. I realized that this all is all I'm ever going to get. That what was is what is, and what will be until I'm gone. That the girl going away wasn't some great tragedy that would scar me for life, because she's only going to be the first among many to leave without ever even realizing I cared. And that someday I'd stop caring altogether. You know what the strangest thing is? I began hoping that day would come sooner rather than later. After I graduated, my mother passed away. Her back had been real bad for a few years by that point, and she really couldn't function anymore. My dad was worn thin trying to take care of her, but in the end it was decided that the only chance she had was an operation. You know, it's strange. So much these last few decades, but most of the improvement has to do with the stuff in the front of the body. As far as back issues are concerned, you're about as likely to die on the operating table as you are to walk away. And my mother? She didn't. She really didn't. I told myself that she was in pain, that maybe she was better off now because she was, but I just had to look at my dad to know it was bullshit. After everything taking care of her took from him, he couldn't handle it anymore. He couldn't handle that it was all for nothing. That she just ended up, yeah, it was gone. Doctors said it was a sudden aneurysm, but I was never really sure. Gone is gone. Not much longer now. Anyway, without my mom and dad, my last real connection to other people was gone. I was working as a cashier in a local drugstore at the time, since I never really found the motivation to seek work in my chosen field after college. My life began to sort of shrink, like I couldn't see anything past my register. I could vaguely comprehend there were people behind those hands that handed me credit cards, but they weren't really there. If you asked me, I honestly couldn't tell you how I felt during those days. I mean, by that point, I was used to living like this. It was all I really knew, and it was paying work, good as any other, so there wasn't no point in complaining. I used to go to those group support forums. Not really to talk to anyone, because the few times I tried it never really did anyone involved any good. No, I was there to look at other people's stories and convince myself that my situation wasn't as bad in comparison. And it really wasn't. Some of those people had terrible shit happening in their lives, and I mean real stuff, real pain. I didn't want to help, though. Not at all. Oh, it's fucked up, but I needed them there, just the way they were. Their pain kept me afloat, kept me sane. From work, I didn't go home. I just couldn't bear the thought of going back to that empty place to sit alone in front of a screen and pretend that I care about the trouble of people I never met and will never meet, to take their dignity away as I secretly rejoiced in their suffering. So I just walked. I walked until there was no more streets to walk and I was outside the city. It was the first time I left the city in years, and out there, in that point just before the mountains start, the light was low, enough to allow you to see the stars. Swirling patterns of them beyond count, beyond reason. So many. I'm not sure what I felt. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. Making no sense. It's the fading, you see. Not much longer now. I'll try and keep myself together, though. Just for a while longer. Together. I was watching those stars. But not only the stars. I began looking at the empty spaces between them, and my legs began carrying me, like that mountain road was going to take me up there, to the heart of the void, and I wanted to go, desperately wanted to go, but no road to the stars, just a building, this building. It was as you see it now, 2 floors, 4 rooms each, and the pools are, but I forget, something was different. The pools, those dry indents right there, they were full of nothing. Nothing made manifest, and nothing with teeth. People out there who can create something from nothing. As my legs carried me to that pool, I spoke to it. It spoke to me about those people. They can look into the empty places that are between things and bend them, fill them with their will, and so, from nothing, something. But those empty places that they fill, they have to go somewhere, right? Yes, the pool told me, and I could hear it. It's so clearly now. I was touching it, you see. The pool told me that most of those people just threw the empty places, that entropy, they just threw it away. They didn't care what happened when an empty place, a place that should be hidden, was exposed. They didn't care that when that happened, the empty places weren't empty anymore because things from other places began to fill them and people died. Most of those who could create didn't care at all, but he did. I could feel him there, in the empty places he left behind him. He didn't throw them away, no. He made a place where they could be safe, where people could be safe from them. And he didn't even know it. He didn't even know he had the power to create the first place. He was just like me, but it was worse for him. I was trapped because I had no power, but he was trapped because he had too much. He was stuck. Because he believed he was stuck. He was unhappy because that was the reality he made from himself, from his empty places, from his personal entropy. He didn't even know that all this power was there, that I was touching it, that I was holding it. But unlike him, I knew that this was power, that this was real. For the first time in my life, I had power, not to create, of course, because this was that power of the empty places. No, this was the power to unmake, to erase everything. I began to shiver as the empty places that the unknowing creator left behind him swarmed over me, and I became them. They became me. I could unmake it all. Those long years without anyone, that way people forgot about me the moment they turned away, that smile on her face, like she didn't even know, that I cared. I could unmake it all. Gone, just like that. That would make them remember. That would make them remember. Oh, I would make them care about me. They would care about me because there was nothing else left, because I'd leave nothing else to care about. They would care about me. I caught myself then, and I could see how far I have fallen. After all those years, there was nothing left in me but jealousy, resentment, and that kind of desire that only leads to ugliness. I couldn't use that entropy that was so kindly left behind for me. A better man could. A better man would use their power for good, this power for good, because there was nothing wrong with entropy. No, it wasn't the power that was corrupt, it was me. But we were tied now, me and it, forever. I knew that if I released it, it would bring things forth. From those empty places between places, things will come forth, and there would be no stopping them. Not me, not the unknowing creator, nor those who held them. No one could stop them. I couldn't hold the power, and I could not release it. But there was a third option, an option that should have been unthinkable, that should have left me weeping for even considering it, but it didn't. Coming. Maybe I hoped it was coming. Self. If I could trust myself to use the power just once, to send myself to a place where it could be no harm, where it would simply dissipate, left to blend with the greater entropy of creation, I would shoot myself upward, like a meteor to reverse, like a meteor in reverse, freezing itself of burning, and my consciousness would disappear with the power forever. There would be no return, for there would be no death. I would simply be gone, for good. This gladdened me. Then I thought. I did not expect anything of me to remain for this long, but I'm glad something did. I finally got to leave, you see. I got to watch the whole world turn before me 100 times, 1,000 more. Green, blue, and red, and that's all. But now, the power is gone. The emptiness returned to whence it came. It's time to go. I thank you for listening. It did me good to know that someone was there to hear what I had to say. It might not mean much to you, but it does to me. Question left for me to ask then. Am I happy? Oh, to live down there, to live as something more than an empty vessel, to be content. I think that would have been enough. But the time for that is done. Done and gone. Am I happy then? No. To fear anymore. That would have been enough.
End transcript. Researchers could not establish if the person speaking through SCP-1935 was addressing anyone in particular, or if the speech was intended to be general. Following this incident, SCP-1935's primary phenomenon ceased to function. 1935 was designated neutralized. Thank you, Krat. An excellent job.
I cannot believe they managed to do that in 7 minutes and whatever seconds it was. Tried for the end there, but, well, you know, pick up the pace, I suppose.
Was this about pattern streamers? I don't think so, Arya. This was about reality benders. Basically, he is saying that whenever a reality bender bends reality and creates something, that something has to come from somewhere. And they leave emptiness behind in that place that they took the something from. And so what's left in that emptiness is worse. It's some form of monster. And so the power that person had realized could bring that emptiness, that lack of creation, to wherever it was that they were. They could literally unmake everything and bring forth monsters. At least that's what I'm getting from it. What do you think, Kret?
I think that's a really good analysis and summary of it. It's definitely within that, from what I've read of reality bending, around that idea, and it always read to me as the story of someone figuring out how reality bending works somehow, just as an anomaly, and learning to craft it. And from that, you see kind of their reality slipping and bending with it.
Yeah. And yes, the Menace, all of the things that the speaker was unhappy with were just absences. Were things that
Indeed
didn't happen. Were just not there. SCP-1440. Kret, you've got the storytelling name.
Indeed. It is the rather fantastically named The Old Man from Nowhere.
Object Class, Keter. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-1440 is currently uncontained, and its location is unknown since its last containment breach. Due to the nature of SCP-1440, the Foundation may not have the means to contain it without risking an unacceptable loss of resources and personnel. Until suitable containment procedures can be found, focus should be given to the location and surveillance of SCP-1440, and to minimize civilian exposure to it through the identification of its travel pattern. Description: SCP-1440 is a man of unknown ethnicity and age. When questioned about its name, place, or time of birth, SCP-1440 will refuse to answer, although it is unclear if this is due to the subject being unwilling to share this information or not possessing it. Actually, I should explain that the designations. There are 5 total designations. Only 3 of them are most often used. There is Thaumiel, Safe, Euclid, Keter, and Neutralized. Neutralized is fairly self-explanatory. It's dead. Its functions are just not happening. It's not an anomaly anymore. For Thaumiel, sorry, I should start with Safe, Euclid, and Keter. So, Safe, Euclid, and Keter do not pertain to how dangerous the object is. Because there are some objects that are completely benign, but their object class is Keter. And the reason for that is they have they have a really great analogy for it called the box test. If you can put an item in a box and expect that it will stay there, it is safe. If you can put an item in a box and with reasonable precautions expect that it will stay there or that it might try to get out but that you can keep it contained, it is Euclid. If you put an item in a box and you know that you cannot keep it in that box, that it will get out no matter what you do, it is Keter. And if it is the box, it's Thaumiel. That's why there are 2 or 3 SCPs that are listed as Damarong and Apollyon, so technically 2 more. I have heard of those, but I don't know what those are supposed to be. So Thaumiel originally started off as SCP-001. And it was supposed to be the greatest secret that the Foundation ever held. But there were like 7 different files that were hiding what the real one was. And so you don't know which one it is. Knowing what Thaumiel is supposed to be, the fact that it is the box, it is the containment, that can write off a couple of things, such as the Archangel Michael. It's definitely not that one. The ones that it could be, though, is things like the Winding Path, the Factory, and a few others. But the great thing about the SCP universe is all of it's canon. All of it. There is no one canon answer. In some SCPs, the Factory is real. It's a thing. The Nerf gun has made by the Factory printed on it. There are mentions to it amongst other places as well. The Winding Path has references to it in some of the SCPs. But the whole point of it is that the website that you're looking at does not take place in one universe. It takes place in all of them. So, yeah, because some of the SCPs, there are stories that are related to the SCPs that are end-of-the-world stories. And there are some SCPs that are end-of-the-world stories. Like, The Star the Hateful is an end-of-the-world story. But if it's to be taken as canon, a lot of the other SCPs can't be. Just because they would have already been wiped out. So that's why you're not looking at one universe when you see the SCP, when you see the website. You're looking at literally every universe and every possibility that could be, which means that everything is canon and nothing is canon. And it lends such a great freedom to the work. It also lends a hell of a lot of confusion in some instances, too.
I think one of my favorite additions to the canon is discovered at the bottom of the Mariana Trench.
Yes,
which,
all of those tapes and stories.
Yeah, and it's a member of the Foundation, this poor individual who is relevant and there at the end of the world, and it's a recording. And mentions at some point in the story that they've reset the world before and they'll do it again. And it's just a great way of... Not only does it seem like something the Foundation would do, but it also explains a lot of the SCP, because it is all canon. And at the same time, it's not. It just depends which version of the reset you're in. I kind of like that one, personally.
Yeah, there's one that's really great. It's not a part of this story, and I'm only going to touch on it for a second. Just because it's interesting and pertains to this conversation. I don't remember its designation, but it is a suit of armor. Specifically, it is a suit of armor that the Foundation made. That is meant, number one, to keep reality bending from affecting you. And number two, to keep everything in the world from noticing you. And the entire point of its existence was to get to the reset button. Was to make sure you safely got there and pressed the reset button. And the SCP entry is the story of a guy who had to do that. But the story is even more chilling than it may initially sound, or that you may initially think, because the reason he had to do it is because the SCP Foundation went to war with the world. Essentially, they let out a message that was a memetic hazard. Like, the O5 Council basically had a vote where they said, all right, we're killing everybody. Everyone. The human race must be wiped out to a man. And they sent out a message that was a memetic hazard, and it either turned people to their side or killed them. And then they hunted down anyone that was left. They went to every single station that was meant to protect people from massive reality-bending end-of-the-world scenarios and massacred all of them. Just executed them on the spot. And then they unleashed all of the SCPs across the entire world. They unleashed the Builder Bear on Paris. They unleashed the Lizard on so much of the world. And the GOC, bless their hearts, they tried to fight. But they just could not fight everything. And so it's just this story of this dude detailing how the SCP Foundation set everything loose, where they used everything tactically, and how they killed everything, and detailed what he thinks happened, what little evidence he could put together. And even then, as with the SCP universe, there's not a clear picture of what exactly happened. We know that the people that were left in the Foundation changed into something, but we don't know what it was or what caused it. But he reset the world, and it fixed everything. So, and then he fell like 5,000. Essentially, he figured out like it is literally a pit that whoever it is has to jump into, and when they come out, it will reset the timeline, and they will die. And so he jumped in and fell some like 10,000 feet with the suit of armor and died on impact. But yeah, that was it's a really cool story. I would love to tell it at a different time, but not right now. Let's see, where were we?
Last designation at the very top, special containment procedures.
And I think we were at description.
Oh, my
I
apologies.
think we were a couple sentences down. Yes, SCP-1440 is a man of unknown ethnicity and age. When questioned about its name, place, or time of birth, SCP-1440 will refuse to answer, although it is unclear if this is due to the subject being unwilling to share this information or not possessing it. Though the subject's appearance is that of an octogenarian, it has not shown any signs of aging in the 50 years since first coming to the attention of the Foundation. SCP-1440's anomalous nature becomes apparent once it comes into contact with the human population or man-made objects and remains in contact with them for longer than a few days. SCP-1440 has an acute adverse effect on everything connected to humanity. Prolonged exposure of any man-made object or person to it will cause increasingly destructive events to occur in 1440's vicinity, until the destruction or death of said human element. The only exceptions to this are 1440 itself and its belongings, its clothes, a sack made of unidentified material, a pack of worn playing cards, and a small glass cup. 1440 appears to be aware of its effect on human populations, and will attempt to avoid coming into contact with them whenever possible. Despite these intentions, 1440 is compelled to travel in what seems to be a highly complex pattern, which invariably leads it into contact with human population. The exact nature of this pattern has not yet been successfully analyzed, and 1440 has not been able to provide any information concerning it. The subject is not actively hostile, and will not resist attempts to contain it, though all such attempts have failed and led to a considerable loss of personnel and resources due to the aforementioned anomalous properties. 1440 was first brought to the Foundation's attention when it approached Dr. Blank, a site researcher at Site Blank, on her commute to work. SCP-1440 showed unexplained knowledge of Dr. Blank's work for the Foundation and requested her assistance. When Dr. Blank inquired about the nature of the assistance the subject required, it responded that it hoped the Foundation would be able to destroy him. SCP-1440 was brought to Site Blank for questioning, which led to the destruction of the site, the deaths of Blank personnel, and the destruction of 6 safe and Euclid-level SCP objects. All other attempts at containing SCP-1440 have resulted in similar occurrences. Addendum 1440-A. The following is an interview conducted with 1440 during the 4th attempt to contain it on Area 142. The log is being stored on a remote server, hence its survival. Interview log 1440-7. Interviewer, Dr. Blank. Interviewed, SCP-1440. Following the arrival of SCP-1440 to Area 142, personnel began complaining about severe headaches and nausea. In the next 2 days, 3 of the 4 on-site water purification filters broke down, Area 142's hangar collapsed, causing the deaths of multiple airmen, and Dr. Blank, previously in perfect physical health, suffered a complete collapse of both kidneys and both lungs simultaneously. Begin log.
Good afternoon, SCP-1440.
And to you, Doctor.
Do you know why we brought you here?
Of course I do, and applaud you for still attempting to contain me. But since your last 3 attempts, I came to realize you cannot help me. It would be best if you let me go, for your own good. The first brother is already standing behind you, Doctor. You would best hurry.
You mentioned these brothers before. 3, if I recall correctly.
3. Aye. Different, but one and the same. All cruel, all vengeful, all capable of holding a grudge for a long time. They are the cause of my misfortune, and therefore the cause of yours. Subject appears to notice something behind Dr. Blank, though video and audio feed reveal nothing unusual. The second brother joins the first. Time is running short. Release me, or I cannot vouch for your safety. It might already be too late.
I'm afraid I can't do that. Besides, you mentioned 3 brothers. The third isn't here yet. We have some time left.
SCP-1440 shakes his head. The third never appears. In that he is crueler than both his brothers, for he knows his appearance is the only thing that will set me free. I have spent time untold searching for him, trying to return his prize and those I won from his brothers, but to no avail. Subject looks behind Dr. Blank again and sighs. The second has his hands on your shoulders. It is too late now. Doom is never far behind the second. Before you perish, my poor child, allow me to give you a word of advice.
Go ahead.
Should you choose to challenge death to a game of cards for your life, there is one thing you must never do.
What is that?
Win. End log. Closing statement. At that moment, the on-site nuclear device stored in Area 142 detonated, despite multiple failsafes. Area 142 was destroyed, and all on-site personnel were killed. SCP-1440 was spotted more than 3,000 kilometers away from Area 1442's location a week following its destruction, suffering no apparent harm. After 3 additional containment breaches, attempts to contain SCP-1440 have been suspended indefinitely. Addendum SCP-1440-B. Due to the growing size of human population and its rapid expansion into previously empty areas, SCP-1440 attested during its 5th containment that it is becoming increasingly difficult for it to avoid contact with humanity while still adhering to its compulsion. Analysis of the subject's travel pattern is continuing, as are efforts to find a permanent containment procedure. SCP-963. This is Dr. Bright, isn't it?
This 963 is... It does mention Dr. Bright. Yes, it does. It's called Immortality. I have, in brackets, just put that damn amulet.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this is Dr. Bright's... this is the way that he gets to his new bodies. It's his immortality.
Yes.
So SCP-963-1 is the amulet itself. -2, I believe, is Dr. Bright.
Yes.
And we're not going to go through this one because I believe it's not terrible, but there's a lot of extra information that has to really be gone over if you're going to go in depth. But essentially, There is a doctor at the Foundation. He is not a member of the O5 or one of the super high-ranking people, but he is a high-ranking scientist named Dr. Jack Bright, and he is an anomaly in and of himself. Essentially, his soul is in this amulet, along with the souls of every single person whose body he has possessed. And, essentially, whenever he dies, they give his amulet to someone else. Whatever his personal assistant is. And, that's pretty much it. He has I wouldn't say an uncaring attitude towards everything, but he definitely, due to his immortality, comes up with a lot of unique solutions for things and a lot of unique testing abilities. Such as one time he possessed SCP-682, the unkillable lizard.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's pretty much Jack Bright. And then we have SCP-343, designated God. Item number SCP-343. Object class, safe. Special containment procedures. SCP-343 resides in a 6.1 meter by 6.1 meter, or 20 foot by 20 foot, room at Minimal Security Site 17. It should be brought any items it requests and visited by at least one staff member each day. Attempts to add further safety precautions or required clearances are unnecessary and impossible due to the nature of SCP-343. See description. SCP-343 is a male, seemingly raceless, humanoid in appearance with apparent omnipotence. SCP-343 was discovered walking the streets of Prague and detained after a staff member witnessed him disappear from the streets and reappear on a rooftop. SCP-343 is detained willingly in his chamber, as containment has proved impossible. Addendum 343-1. And, Krat, if you would like to take over for Dr. Beck.
Yes. SCP-343, colloquially named God by the staff here, looks like an older man, although his features are different to each observer. In my first talk with him, he claimed outright to be the creator of the universe. When I asked him to prove this, he laughed, walked through the wall of the chamber, and returned seconds later with a hamburger in his hand. When I returned for a second visit, the previously bare cell had been furnished in upscale Old English style, complete with a roaring fireplace, and seemed many times larger than it did from the exterior. SCP-343 greatly enjoys speaking with people, and seems to have a knowledge of all topics. Visiting with SCP-343 has become a daily event for many of the staff here, and all employees report feeling generally happier after each visit. Attempts to bar staff below Level 3 clearance have proven unsuccessful, as guards assigned to watch the room quit their posts, saying, "You know he likes company," or shrugging when questioned. Since SCP-343 has thus far been harmless, all staff have been allowed access, and somehow they all have time to meet with him for as long as they need. For now, I leave this report open, as further questioning of SCP-343 is ongoing.
Warning. Security level 4 or higher needed for further access. Addendum 343-2. In regards to Document 343-1A, there are no relevant records available or seemingly in existence, and similarly, all records of Dr. Blank Blank ever working with SCP-343 or Dr. Beck are missing and presumed non-existent. All staff questioned about the document convey ignorance of Document 343-1A and claim not to have met Dr. Blank Blank. In a related matter, Senior Officer Dr. Beck has required a higher staff rotation to increase morale in worse-off sections. This is a very odd request and was the subject of further investigation. Other localized anomalies, such as better health, greater job satisfaction, and lower fatalities in this section, have led to the request being granted. This subject is now closed on orders of O5-blank. Addendum 343-3. Data recovered on blank. from routine check of Dr. Blank Blank's network drive. Document 343-1A. Data lost. As of blank, visitors of SCP-343 are to be questioned as to their intent, and conversations pertaining to other SCP are to be put forth. Orders of Dr. Document 343-1B. Apparently, my orders have gone missing. This is the last straw, All my reports and requests to higher-ups have gone unnoticed. I will confront SCP-343 tomorrow. Signed, Dr. And I will note that this document changed, because several years ago, when I first read this one, there was no message from this doctor. Instead, you had... In fact, I don't think there was anything about Dr. Beck either. Instead, you had a note from one of the O5s who was super pissed off that SCP-343 could not be contained. And I believe the message went something along the lines of, "We have one of the most dangerous SCPs here in our facility, and the only reason we can keep it contained is because we're keeping it happy?" And like that was the only addendum to this thing. So they added another level of sinisterness to it by the fact that one of the doctors seems to have pretty much just been wiped out of existence when they went to confront 343.
Yeah, it's very Paradise Lost. The idea of like essentially confronting your creator or perhaps someone else's, and they don't appear to be in existence anymore.
Yep. The last 3 SCPs that are up here, we're only going to summarize them because they are very, very long entries.
Yes, they're incredibly verbose.
Let's see. 076 is Abel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in relation to Cain and Abel. 076 and 073 are Abel and Cain. As per the Bible story, Cain and Abel were Adam and Eve's first children. And Cain, I believe, was the gardener. He was the vegetable. He was the person in charge of basically the plants, and he grew the vegetables and fruits and everything else. Abel, meanwhile, was the shepherd. He took care of the sheep, the cows, the goats, everything else. And when both of them went to give their sacrifices, Cain brought his vegetables, and Abel brought his meats. And God happily accepted Abel's sacrifice, but was not pleased with Cain's sacrifice, despite the fact that he had actually given them their jobs himself. It makes a rather interesting tale, because pretty much at the end of it, like, you realize that God's a dick. Mm-hmm. He gave Cain and Abel their jobs, and then when Cain brought forth his sacrifice and was like, "Here, God, here's like part of my harvest that you requested," God was like, I don't know that I like my veggies anymore. But Cain got really jealous of Abel and then murdered Abel. And here, Abel is a homicidal psychopath that lives in a sarcophagus. He basically spends his time regenerating in there every time he gets killed. And then the sarcophagus opens up on its own every time he's done regenerating fully. And then he wakes up and goes on a homicidal killing rampage.
Yeah,
he is nearly indestructible, is able to swat bullets out of the air, and can just summon swords. Like, just summons them, and knows how to use them perfectly. There was an interesting bit to his story where the same agent managed to kill him over and over again. And after a while, that agent finally died to another SCP. And when Kane came out, he saw it wasn't that agent, and he went, "Where is he?" And upon learning that that dude had died, he was like, "That was my greatest challenge. There is nobody amongst you who is worthy of challenging me anymore, and this is not worth my time." And basically, like, started working for the SCP Foundation for a while before his bloodlust got the better of him. But, and then I feel snubbing Kane was one of the less shitty things God did. Sort of. It's shitty on a different level from some of the things that God did. Because he specifically gave Kane a job and then told him, "Okay, as part of this job, you're going to bring your vegetables to me, and your vegetables and fruits, and the fruits of your labor, and you're going to sacrifice a part of them to me as per the main thing. And this is your job. I give you this job." And Cain and Abel both brought their sacrifices together because God wanted them to, and God happily accepted Abel, and then looked at Cain and just went, "Nah, I don't like your harvest." And put the, like, he snubbed Cain in, like, one of the worst possible ways. Definitely, like, as far as the murder of his brother goes, like, that's on Cain. I feel like that was his jealousy, that was his decision. But at the same time, when God tells you to do something and you do it, and God says, I don't like the job you did, but then, like, overly praises the other person who he gave a job to, I'm not surprised that that he killed that person. I think my dog needs to go out, so we're going to take a quick break. Krat, if you don't mind summarizing the other two real quick, and then
Yes,
I will,
absolutely.
when I come back, if you're done with it by then, I will read the story.
No problem at all. So we've had a nice summary of SCP-076 Able there. There's not really anything more to add on top of that. You can see there's a paragraph at the top from Director Maria Jones, Record Keeping and Information Security Administration, revision of the file. I have to go on record as saying that I seriously object to the proposed revisions of the SCP-076 Special Containment Procedures file. I know that Redact All Important Stuff already claims it's a security risk, but you and I both know it's just top brass trying to sweep their biggest and most embarrassing mistake ever under the damn rug. Omega 7 happened. It existed. Those people died because you screwed up, and you can't change that no matter how hard you try to hide it. For God's sake, man, those people guarding him deserve to know exactly what he is and what he did, what we did, how we fucked up, so they'll know better. I mentioned that before moving on to the others because while it does get mentioned in the SCP file, there's a separate SCP entry similar to the likes of the Factory, the Stars, Do Not Wait for You, and various others that goes into detail about the actual mission, as it were. It does suffer a bit from the ramped up the bloodlust thing, but it's still interesting to read nonetheless if you enjoy finding out more about your entry in the flavor text. SCP-073 is Kane, and what's interesting is Kane is very placid. Abel is a murderous force of nature. Abel is cooperative with the Foundation. He's listed as Euclid because he, although being quite cooperative, is made of an unknown metal. It's listed as beryllium bronze, and it's unknown who exactly first forged it and where it originally comes from. Kane is essentially cybernetic in all but actual cybernetics. He has this metal armor over him. He has a photographic memory. The article mentions that he is given a full dictionary, flicks through it in a couple of minutes, and then knows the entire dictionary. He makes special mention that concerning Abel, he says he knows of this entry, the familiarity with them, and was disinclined to add to why. He then says it would be better for all parties involved if they never meet. So it's clear that the Foundation has either not told Abel about, well, clearly hasn't told it, and is probably actively telling him that they don't know who Kane is, if Abel has ever mentioned it. Generally polite and genial, speaks many, many different languages, knows lots of different forms of information, and they use Kane as a method of backing up information. So they create a file from the information he has. Particular importance in the article refers to bringing anything within close proximity to Kane results in it dying, which is interesting given what we heard Canuda talking about in terms of being a farmer. I'm trying to find the specifics on it. Oh, that's it. Violence directly towards SCP-70. It's violence. It's not. Oh no, it is wood and paper. Soil-grown life immediately rots and disintegrates upon the touch of SCP-073. Further affected derivatives include anything hydroponically grown. The Foundation members tried to draw blood and tissue samples, and then discovered that in doing so, they took their own. So any damage or pain, any form of force or attack done upon Kane is done upon the person. Finally, SCP-284. This is one of the ones that lists a threat level. In this case, it's designated a black threat level, and its containment class is Kita. This is a rather elaborate sort of deer. There's a load of different procedures for it. A ritual essentially must be conducted to keep it in check. And it appears to be, it's a quadruped entity measuring 2.9 meters in height, weighing 815 kilograms. It has a sinuous neck, generally held in an upright position, and terminates in a head with a humanoid facial feature. Antlers are white with black marbling in coloration. And it's covered in hair with an average length of 10 centimeters, with the exception of the face, which is hairless. So it's a deer with the face of a person. Its coloration is primarily a pastel green with a stripe of cream on the underside of the neck and belly. A ring of ice particles is suspended 15 centimeters behind its skull, measuring 1.7 meters in diameter, with a ring thickness of 35 centimeters. The ring is interrupted at regular intervals by 7 spheres consisting of metallic hydrogen and metallic helium, each measuring 15 centimeters in diameter. Those rings and spheres rotate clockwise at a speed of 1.6 RPM. The force maintaining the movement of the ring, the physical state of the spheres, and the means by which SCP-2845 is capable of supporting its head under this weight of its antlers are unknown. It's capable of instant transmutation and offensive transmutation. The offensive transmutation produces what are known as instances of SCP-28451, which are modified human beings. The modification turns them into hexagonal columns measuring 2.4 meters in height with rubbery yellow-green skin. They don't have any outward sensory organs, but autopsy has shown that internal organs are likewise absent except for the brain, which now takes up the entirety of the column and contains the reconstituted mass of the other organs with some additional outside materials. It's unknown how these instances derive nutrients or if any nutrition is required. They've revealed that the brain is a constant state of hyperactivity. An analysis of multiple specimens indicate patterns of call and response, so some form of remote communication between these specimens is presumed.
Hello.
So, Hello. Just
Sorry to interrupt.
summarizing the finale of SCP-2845.
Okay.
It has 7 key ritualistic stages, or 6 ritualistic stages, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Involving the castration of D-class prisoners and eating children in order to pacify it.
I still love that one of them ends with the people having a dice game.
Very much so. So yeah, finished up summarizing Cain rather, and the deer.
I saw some of the chat. Nishtvert, I saw your thing about how they asked Abel about Cain, and it's interesting because they asked Cain about Abel, and pretty much the only response they got from him was, best not to put us in the same facility. But yeah, it is interesting with 2845 that it is not kept there because there is any power in the ritual. The power is in SCP-2845 thinking that there is power in the ritual.
Yes.
The druid that they have in charge of it is very clear on that. It's like, this ritual does not actually do anything. We are literally bluffing a god.
Yep.
But, alright. So, we will go on to the main attraction here. The stars do not wait for you. It's quiet out here. The desert sprawls from horizon to horizon, where purest white meets twilight red. There are no edges here, no angles, just curves and the gentle rise and fall of dunes as far as the eye can see, and everywhere beyond that. Had a visitor from some other world laid eyes on this place, they might have found it serene, even beautiful, pure. I can enjoy no such delusions, regretfully, for I know what lies beneath and among the sands of the endless desert. A charnel house, spanning an entire planet. 7 billion human souls, ground thin and fine, until no trace of their existence could ever be found. I know this, because I put them all there. Oh, brother. It all happens so fast once we're gone. It began the day you that I have never known, found my power. The power I hid from myself in some previous life for reasons I can now easily guess. I was looking out the window of my apartment so I could see the stars, and instead I saw you, blazing as you tore yourself asunder to keep the power away from yourself. You didn't trust what you would do with it, and so you chose to throw it away. You knew yourself all too well, as I suspect I did too at one point. By all accounts, I should not have been able to see you, for my apartment was truly a tiny containment cell about half a mile underground, but such considerations never meant much to one living entirely in his own world. When I saw the moment of your demise, I became aware of myself for the first time in... I have no idea how long. Whichever part of me that led me to throw away my power did the same to my will, trapping it in an eternal status quo from which there could be no release. An eternity of filling spreadsheets for employers who existed solely in my head, of 9 o'clock meetings with no one, of fake masturbatory crushes over imaginary women, an eternity of tired, grinding mediocrity. But that was over that night, with your soul burning in the atmosphere like the loneliest of stars. I awakened. I died. For whatever left that little cell-turned-apartment wasn't me anymore. I was never more than an earthworm, distinct from all the rest only in that I had a little more control over the soil in which I crawled. They never thought me more than a minor reality bender, a bundle of introverted powers and neuroses that was very unlikely to ever pose any serious threat. And they were right. The person I was, SCP-1915 as they called me, never was anything other than that. But 1915 died that day, watching a fallen star. The thing that then swatted the guards posted at its cell like they were less than gnats, that raised Site-17 into this fine white sand that is now so warm beneath the feet. That was something else. Not an entity, for that would imply a personality, and this thing surely has none. Not a purpose, for there was no purpose behind its action then, nor will there be for any of its actions to come. Nor was it a will, for it wants nothing. Not vengeance, not dominion, not freedom, not even simple power. No, if I had to describe that thing as anything at all, it would be an absence. A void where the entity should be. A lack of purpose. An imbecile force devoid of all will. An absence. The sand is still warm to the feet. That means the sun still burns high above. I wonder why it lets it remain when all else was so quickly erased. When it could so easily just reach and pluck it out of the sky. Had it been another, I'd suspect it was to mock humanity's memory. To mock that sliver of me that still persists in the flesh, stubborn like a buried tick. But this is the absence. It does not mock. After Site-17's destruction, retaliation soon followed. Standard containment teams at first, though certainly still enough to meet any anomaly the Foundation imagined could be contained in Site-17 with overwhelming force. When those men failed to return, failed to even report their arrival, more serious measures had to be taken. Site-17 has always been isolated, and so they could act freely. Gunships and fire teams, aerial bombardment and artillery barrages, the Foundation came down on what it still believed to be SCP-1915 like a fire god's fist, all heat and sound and bluster. Had it still been truly corporeal, I doubt even ashes would have remained. But whatever the absence truly was by that point, the tattered semblance of my flesh hanging around it had very little to do with it. It simply stood there and took it all in, and the Foundation's initial fury was soon spent. It then began to walk, and not too quickly either. For days, it simply leisurely strode on while the Foundation threw everything it had at it. I watched from within my deadbolt as it walked unfeeling, uncaring, and this desert followed in its wake, as inscrutable and unstoppable as its harbinger. We are not quite alone here. Some stubborn immortals persist, wretched creatures. A continent away, an ancient man still walks, tormented by 3 mocking voices. He believed that once he was the only one left, he would be allowed to rest. He was wrong. Beneath the ground is a soul, suffocating as the earth slowly grinds its sanity to mulch. From its prison of gold and rubies, there would be no release. Elsewhere lies a once smiling god as the sands cover his prone figure. He does not resist. He had once promised the world his love, promised humanity the stars. Sand pours through his fingers as he tries to gather his flame together. His people. But it is dying, and they are dead. Extinguished. When someone walks, they are bound to reach somewhere eventually, despite everyone's best efforts, and so the absence arrived at its first city, the sands at its heels like an obedient lapdog. Oh, there have been villages and towns before that, but the absence didn't seem to care enough to bother with them. It simply walked by, leaving them to the whims of the sands, which were only ever singular in their intent. But through the streets of the city it strode as mobile task forces fought and fell to buy the civilian population just a few more minutes to evacuate. By this point, hiding what was truly going on became impossible, of course, as street after street sank beneath that gentle, crawling tide. The Foundation had, of course, attempted to evacuate the city once it realized there would be no stopping the absence. But if I've learned anything in my eons as a corporate peon, is that organizing an operation of that magnitude is something that takes a lot more time than the Foundation had. It's a wonder they managed to save as many as they did. As for the rest, it had waited until night fell. I imagine it was an eerie sight. That lone figure standing beneath the frozen light of other worlds in that empty intersection between financial and residential districts, where train tracks used to be before the old steam locomotives went out of service and were never replaced by newer ones. Yes, it waited until it could see the stars. Then it burned. Without heat, without light, without life. It burned a hole through the city, and there was nothing to fill it in. Reality cannot suffer a vacuum, they always said, but the absence had shown how little it cared for reality. So it was gone, just like that. How does one explain something like that? How do you describe what isn't there? Where one moment was a city of 500,000, the next it wasn't. To the place it was, even the sands wouldn't come. It was just a scar. It was nothing. It was then, I believe, that the Foundation realized it could not stand alone. The next few months of the Absence's march saw them turn to their sometimes allies. Coalition mage killers and thermonuclear strikes, initiative paladins and holy relics, sniper rifle or sacred sword, burning inferno or divine retribution. The Absence did not care. And soon, the Foundation had no allies left to turn to. It then called on its once vicious enemies. Ink-eaters wove their art in maddening patterns to break the minds of the infinite. Archivists and librarians poured from the ways, bringing with them the knowledge of 100,000 worlds. Clockwork titans shook the barren whiteness of the sands with the thunder of metal. The Absence did not care. And soon the Foundation ran out of enemies. In a last act of desperation, they then committed their final, most painful betrayal. The Wardens unleashed upon the world their prisoners. Of these I have made note, though I doubt the Absence did the same. On the blasted wasteland that was once Boston, it was assailed by two brothers. One savage, the other somber. One violent, the other reluctant. They nevertheless fought with a graceful unity to take the breath away. In their eyes, I saw that they did not know each other for a very long while, and that they fought so that they could have the time to rectify this. I saw regret and hope, rage and desperation, but most of all, I saw a simple need to be. I would like to believe that you and I would have been like them had we met, brother. They fought with the fury of 1,000 years of solitude. It did not suffice. In a wounded valley that had once been part of the Black Sea, we came across a self-proclaimed god. There was nothing but confidence in his eyes as he threw reality itself into disarray, bent and twisted its most fundamental laws to bring the Absence untold destruction. The earth froze and boiled and heaved, the air screamed with brighted glee, and the god he strode draped in a cloak of lightning, as time itself clawed at the Absence with talons of utter unbeing. Until the god came to meet the Absence's lack of a gaze. Until his eyes rested on a nothing that lasted forever. until he did not suffice. Before the walls of Acre, as the ancient city was drowned by the desert, two figures approached us. One was four-legged and horned. Its crown was ice, its eyes galaxies. Its whole was power absolute. The second was a man, simple, humble, but possessing a love of being that extended to the edges of the universe. Compassion to pierce the deepest of hells that had nothing to do with weakness. Of the two, I could not tell you which was more glorious, which was more terrifying. They met the absence with will alone, and when I felt it fall on us, I thought I would weep. Surely nothing could withstand such presence. Surely nothing would want to. But the absence was less than nothing. Infinitely less. I have told you of what became of kind Pangloss. Of the other, even less remained. Second, need a drink of water. For months they came, for years, for decades, alone or in groups, with ferocity or with a blank stare. The Foundation's prisoners threw themselves at the absence. I could not hope to imagine the reasons behind the actions of every individual anomaly, but if I could guess, I would say that the idea of sharing existence with a thing like the absence galled them to the point of madness. I do not blame them. But by the end, the prisons ran empty, as the world dried up, as life was drained from it inch by inch, grain by grain, until only one city remained. I do not know by which power I was allowed to send my senses ahead of us, as the absence marched towards that tottering bastion, which held in its quivering embrace the very last of humanity. As the sands around us buried the last of the trees that will ever grow in this land, I felt each tiny mote of life in that sad place, like the flame of a cheap candle, moments before the typhoon. In these moments, as twilight danced in lurid reds and oranges on ivory, I sensed them all. For you, brother, I witnessed. In a low, narrow room, a woman sat hunched at the foot of her even narrower bunk, and couldn't bring herself to pray. She had lost her mother when she was but a babe, and though she was no longer young, her features still displayed to all the violence of that incident. Her mother stood before the eater of children and did not bulge, and when they both fell down, she sang still the praise of her Lord. She lost her father in the first days of the war against the absence, as the paladins marched with holy fervor in their eyes. Her father had been a believer, had always been a solid presence in her life, an anchor immovable by anything but regret. He had promised her he would be back. He did not mean to lie. But his God had forsaken him when it counted most, forsaken all of them. And now Naomi knelt at the foot of the ever-narrowing bunk and could not pray, so she cursed instead. Below, in a series of dank cellars, which might have at one point stored cheeses, a woman of about 40 tinkered with broken toys. When she was young, she made wonders, such wonders. In every line etched across her prematurely old face, I saw what could have been, had it not been for the absence. For me. In the dim light and the soft noise of rotting wood crumbling beneath calloused fingers, I saw the death of potential. The death of all possibility. Though Isabel was stubborn as she always was, she knew that this toy would be her last. Just as well, she thought. After today, there would be none left to play with it. On the rooftop of the highest building still standing, an elderly man watched the world come to an end. He was once an agent of the Foundation, once one among 100,000, ready, prepared, and collected. His duty was to instruct new agents what was proper for an agent to do, how it was proper for an agent to think. And he had been very good at his job, since, generally, his recruits survived for long enough to thank him. But what was he now, he wondered, as he watched the sands pour over the paltry last line of defense that a few defiant fools erected the day before. His lads and lasses were all long since dead, and all that he knew, all of his years of training and experience, in the end they amounted to less than nothing. No longer an agent, for there was no longer an agency. No longer a teacher, for the students were gone. No longer a man, since, well, it would not do to repeat that, now would it? No longer anything, and that was the cruelest joke. It no longer mattered if the absence arrived, he thought. They were already within it. A noise behind him, and the old man turned to see a small, mousy man in a wrinkled gray suit and a deflated hat that at one point was likely a fedora. He looked at the old man, but said nothing. Lombardi looked back and didn't know if to laugh or cry. Soon it ceased to matter. Such was the end. Quiet, small, bereft of heroics and great deeds, free of pretensions of great meaning. One night, there was human race on the planet Earth. The next, there wasn't. And that was that. The stars did not wait for you, brother. When you took my power, when you burned yourself in the skies above, they looked upon you and felt nothing. The stars did not wait for humanity, for all the promise it showed, for all the promise others saw in them. But what of the absence? What of me? I am, by all accounts and possible qualifications, the greatest monster this world has ever seen, perhaps that any world saw. And yet, brother, I see now that the stars wait for us, for me. Where's the justice in that? Seek it not, for there is none. But the fact remains, brother. The stars do not wait for you, but they wait for me to take them into my embrace. I suspect I shall not be long. And that is the story.
Bravo. Bravo.
Give me just a moment.
Of course.
I have to say, I love the writing of this story, because it portrays itself to be a lack, to be almost emotionless, just more of a recounting of what happened. But there is great emotion if you look under the surface at some of the details, such as when it describes Pangloss 343 and the deer coming to encounter it, and when it describes Cain and Abel. And I don't know if you could tell from some of those, but I was crying during some of those.
You could hear it coming through in your voice a little, but it just added to the loss and the absence of pain that seemed to be there, but they seemed to be clutching onto any emotion that could be there. The futility they felt at being a passenger on the entire ride, knowing what they were moving towards, and while not, I think, accepting fully, not denying what was happening. And hoping, I think, in some regard, that each time they met something new, it would be enough.
Yes,
but also
definitely.
knowing that it wasn't. It's a very powerful story. I haven't actually. I don't think I've read that one. It's been a while since I looked at any of the SCP entries. I've seen a few of them, but that was one of the ones that I didn't get into. But I think it takes a beautiful reading like the one you've just given us to really sort of capture and paint a picture.
No,
Thank you for giving us that today.
There are so many tales and things that we could go through in the SCP. The entries themselves alone could take us a year to get through. But then there's so many tales that branch out from them. Some of them are short, some of them are novels in length. God, this community has so many amazing writers and authors and creative minds. It is amazing to see. And it's so good that they put this work on here just to let us see it. Just puts it out there.
It's I'm really glad I came across it, and I'm really glad that I've met other people who've found their way onto the site and all have something, a value in it. It means something different to everyone else. Regardless of, whether you prefer the comedic stories of like what Dr. Bright is not allowed to do, or the more like sinister and like Hellraiser type stories of the room made of meat, essentially. Looking back on some of those early entries as well. And also looking back on the first entry, was it the 173? Is that the designation?
That's the statue, right?
Yeah, the living statue, or the one that comes to life whenever you blink.
Yeah, that moves and tries to kill you when you're not looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
The original idea of the Weeping Angels.
Yeah. And seeing that form so many more stories, and then seeing that translate into a game as well, where you blink, and then the other SCPs that were forged from that, and then when you were playing SCP, SCP Blackwatch, was that the name?
Blackout,
thank you. With a completely new SCPs made for the game, and watching how that thing worked, and like seeing how the whole game flowed, and then hearing people like the Volgan doing voice work for it. It was just fantastic to kind of see the different ways people have painted stories and pictures of SCP, Secure, Contain, Protect Foundation.
Yes. And we briefly touched earlier about SCP-001. And I love some of the extra stories that have come out about it. And some that did not originally seem to be about it, but when it ended, you realize that it was. Me particularly, I love the idea that the file of 001 does not in any way, shape, or form contain 001. It does not show what it is. there is the story of the Ouroboros cycle, where essentially it's just this never-ending cycle of somebody destroying the O5 Council, killing every last one of them, and getting to and killing the administrator, and just tearing down the SCP Foundation brick by brick, until eventually they realize what 001 really is. And the idea of it is that SCP-001 is the SCP Foundation's motto. It is the SCP Foundation's goal. 001 is containment. It must contain things. It must have these anomalies to secure, contain, and protect. And that is 001. And they are trying to destroy it. The O5 Council want it gone. They want to completely neutralize it, and they can't figure out how. And so instead of allowing it to basically like contain the world and unleash a whole bunch of things on the world, they instead become a part of it. They become the SCP Foundation, and it's just this cycle that keeps repeating itself of the O5 Council being constantly replaced by people who don't realize what it is, and then finally realizing, oh, that's what it is. That's what all of this is.
Two of my favorite stories to do with that are kind of mirrors of each other. They are the unyielding beginning and the sudden end. That's not the names of them, but they're my descriptions. It's an SCP-001 file that is essentially a file, and every time you open it, there's a new SCP.
Yep.
It's the horror of the fact that you know each day a new SCP, and it tells you all the details. It's the files you read. So the Foundation get told every day about a new SCP, about a new anomaly that's somewhere in the world. And some days it's safe. Some days you can contain it. And other days you had best try and find it as quick as possible, because the world is suddenly in greater danger than you've ever known, and you have no idea how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And the flip side of it, it's called Quiet Days.
Yes, I remember that story.
Yeah, it's this brilliant just... I know the comments for that one are a particular, like, I don't like how it just ended. I think it's brilliant, personally,
great.
because it's just... The anomalies appeared out of nowhere and no one knows. Well, what if the final anomaly is they all stop?
Yep.
Simultaneously.
All of it just goes away.
Just goes away. And you don't know if it will ever come back. You don't know what it means, but they're gone. SCP doesn't need to exist anymore. The Foundation doesn't need to exist anymore, but they're quiet days. As the old man in the story says, you just kind of enjoy them while you can.
Yep.
I kind of like that. Hey, Hive.
Hi, Hivarius. I think my favorite SCP... I told you about this one before, but my favorite SCP is 4,999. And it's such a short and simple entry, and it's literally just... It's a dude that appears to people who are dying alone. They have no one watching them. There might not even be anybody who cares about them. But they're dying, and they're alone, and he just shows up and comforts them in their final moments and lets them know that they are not alone.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing of the dude. There's nothing sinister or terrible about it. It's just either the universe or God or whatever the fuck you want to explain it as, just being like, no, you're not alone.
Yeah. It's the idea of someone looking at the phrase, the universe is cold and caring, and going, well, what if it wasn't? What if there really is somewhere out there for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to be able to appear at your bedside and just... for a lot of it, it can seem very uncharacteristically nice, Nick Schwert. a lot of, I think, the SCPs that get a lot of press are the extremely gory or the Cthulhuan one,
Yeah.
or the Cthulhuoid
Everybody
ones, or
loves a good horror tale.
yeah, there's like
Nice
the body horror
tales.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice tales don't get the press. Things that just,
yeah,
leave you feeling okay.
yeah. Like there is something I really like, something oddly happy about the Quiet Days one, and it's like very happy and nice about the one uh you've mentioned as well, 4999. The most tragic one in my book, for all the sort of world-ending stories, for all the cataclysms, is Paper Dragons.
Oh, yeah. That one
Paper
is so
Dragons will
tragic.
make you cry on the inside if it doesn't make you cry on the outside. It's such a tragedy. It's an opera, and it's it's heart wrenching. It's gut wrenching, and it does it in a way that so many. Here be dragons. Yeah, it's like it's not happy reading. Like, it
No.
looks cute and cutesy, but it's like, if you're not in a good place, don't read Here Be Dragons. It's the SCP equivalent of like Sophie's Choice. Like, it's not going well throughout at all.
I think probably the saddest part of it is that the way you're learning about everything is literally just a dragon. One of the dragons, like, asking, "Where are you?" Like,
Yeah.
that's what everything can be summed up as. They're just
Yeah.
things are getting worse, but it's just this
Yeah.
one creature that's just like, "Where are you? We want you to come back."
Yeah. And I can't remember if it's like, I think it's classed as neutralized. I think it was the
Yeah.
first story I came across that was neutralized, and I'm like, what does this mean? And then I read the story, and I learnt exactly what neutralized means. It's kind of, for the SCP, it means null and void.
Yeah, it means that it's not showing any further anomalous properties. It's
Yeah,
done.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
It
done and
it
gone.
might be dead, it might be non-functional, it just might not exist anymore, but it's done. I think
Ah.
out of all of them, I think the most amusing one for me was Bobbles the Clown. It's literally just this TV show of a clown named Bobbles that brainwashes kids into committing more and more horrendous acts. And the SCP Foundation has been consistently interrupting his stories, and he's aware of it. And he starts sending them angrier and angrier episodes, where eventually it's just like, one of the episodes was entitled "Bobble Hates You," and it's just Bobble in a white void sitting on a chair staring angrily at the camera. Or Bobbles, like, in the SCP facilities, detailing how to cause containment breaches.
There's some joke ones in there as well. There's like the I think it is it SCP, is it literally SCP 420? Are they that on the nose with
SCP 420J.
it? Yeah, 420J.
All of the joke ones are specifically designated J.
That's right. And there's, I think it is a joke one. It's literally the vibrator with the 3 settings that are the most intense in the world or something.
Yeah, I think of all the joke ones, my favorite is Jeff from accounting. It's just an accountant that has this anomalous property of just speaking in random nonsense about the economy and slowly convincing everyone else that nonsense means something. To the point that they put him, like, in a room separate from 682, and 682 eventually started talking about business mergers and the bottom line and all this other stuff. Like, started trying to set up a mutual fund at a bank.
Yeah, it's so amazing. I'm looking forward to reading some of the more horror ones on the 11th though with you. That's going to be so much fun.
That will be good. We'll have to figure out exactly what we want to read. because
For
that would be
sure.
good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
this has been fun. This is the end of my stream. Krat, do you want to plug anything else?
just mentioning there that you can hear us reading some more of the horror side of things, which might become the more bone chattering or bone shattering on my channel, twitch.tv/rcrat, AR_CRAT, on the 11th of May at 8:30 p.m. British Standard, which is 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, for my online horror festival. May I scare you? Kind of think like it's for the sort of Monday of Myths. So alongside all the other sort of broadcasts I'm doing, looking at ancient myths, I'm looking at modern tales. And what better set of modern tales than the SCP Foundation, which are some really nice creepypastas and various, like, some beautifully, like, great eldritch and other sort of horror in their own right, as you've heard today.
I think Tom just served you with a pretty sick burn there, Krat.
Oh, what's that?
You mentioned "May I scare you," and Tom said you already do, Krat.
Already do? That's absolutely fine. Ow. Love you, Tom. Love you. Beyond that, I'd say check out Alleycat Tom01. He has started a channel up, like New Direction, built from the ground up, which is no mean feat. I'm really excited for the content you're going to be bringing us, Tom.
Yes.
And genuinely check them out. They are a fantastic streamer. They have, like, if you enjoy my voice, you will absolutely enjoy the dulcet, smooth as syrup tones of Alleycat Tom. Like, wow, definitely. Yeah, seriously, go and check
advertise.
them
I know
out.
exists.
Yeah, like give them a follow. They are fantastic, and give them suggestions for things to read as well, because I want to hear them read everything from the phone book to I don't know. Bullcrat's an amazing one, Nick.
I want us to read entries from the phone book, Krat.
Yes.
As a joke
Yeah.
stream one day. We've got an amazing story from you. 8725.
999999999.
Mr. P. Johnson at Willikers Lane.
Brian Smith at 21 Everbrook Crest. Extra Victory. Well, I guess we won't get to hear their number. But
just
story
just in the background, just like have you or me, depending on who's talking, and maybe another person, just like, oh my god, that's amazing.
Oh my god, the way you told those 3 digits there, and the name Mr. Smith, gripping.
Life-changing.
Just Spielberg.
My worldview is gone.
Oh my god, I need a podcast of that. I need that every day in every form. That's the real horror read. That's the real nightmare. Before I forget, speaking of the real nightmare, if you want to watch me and a bunch of others completely fail as orcs in the videos for Canuda's channel, you can watch both parts of Great Orc Gods, where we come up with the best names and then fall flat on our ass, and it's hilarious and brilliant.
Come up with the best names and then watch your orc die within 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I needed more darker and I couldn't get it.
No, I think. Oh no, Krat. I have an even better idea for the phone book reading joke stream.
Yeah.
It has to be a practical joke, a prank that we pull on viewers. Have these people in this chat tonight. You have some of you, at least one of you, has to show up whenever we plan this joke stream, if we do. And your job is to act like everything we've said is amazing. Just play it up like bullshit, while every other person in the audience is sitting there going, what the fuck are you talking about?
Thank you, Glaucus. We have our plan.
Yes! Awesome.
You will show up, and you will grace us with the best compliments and throw roses and everything. Yes, I will send reminders to you, Nichwork.
Yes.
As Nichwork is a very good friend, and I will constantly remind them.
This has to be a thing now.
Fantastic. Thank you for wanting me to do this. It's been a genuine pleasure.
This was great. Thank you for the assistance. It helped out a lot to have you there to tell 935 and to be the extra voice in these interview logs.
Yeah, that's because that's a lot for any one person to go through. I think definitely. Unless you've got a lot of production and time behind it, like the Vulcan does, having multiple people to do the reads just helps with being able to sort of divide between them. Yeah.
Or if you've just got the voice acting skill that the Vulcan does, that dude can do so many different voices.
I aspire to be as good as he is with a few different things he does, and to the production value, genuinely, if you go on YouTube and look him up, people,
we say the few things that he does, but almost every voice that you hear on his show is him. Almost all of them, and there's a good 20 or 30 characters that dude does throughout all of the different videos he's done.
It's one of those. He's a Northern Irish, I believe, voice actor. He's an Irish voice actor anyway. Forgive me, I cannot remember which of them is. But you hear him do several types of American and just fantastic British.
It is flawless.
Estuary London accent.
Thank you for that, Darthulius. But hey Darth. How's it going? Thank you for the follow. But I was playing with Darth earlier. He is brilliant. The Vulcan is absolutely brilliant. His American accents are fucking flawless. When I first heard Dr. Miller and then heard him speak regularly, I was like, wait a minute. No.
It's phenomenal. Especially hearing them go to the plague doctor as well. Hearing the factory is it's amazing. And then you hear him go, "Hello, my name's Aaron, and I'm of Irish voice actor." You're like, huh? And you can tell. Would you permit me to put the link to their YouTube channel in the chat?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay.
Yeah, if you liked this reading, go check out the Vulcan. He is amazing. I love him to death. He does some really great readings.
For sure.
But yeah, this has been fun. I believe it is time for us to go. Me and Krat are gonna go cuddle by the fire. That's not gonna happen. If only we could.
I would love.
I will cuddle with anyone.
If you subscribe to Knuded right now,
you too can cuddle with me. Anyway, have a good night, everybody, and thank you again, Krat.
Thank you very much for having me. Good night, everybody.
Good night.